And there's a total of, there's one attendee.
Thanks for joining, everyone. We'll be starting in a minute or two.
Oh, 4 more joined. That's good.
Grace, you've got your hand up. We generally use the chat window if you have any questions or comments.
It's not showing our attendees on our
Under the participants window, and the sub window of attendees, I see them all there.
Oh, you see their names and stuff?
Yes.
All right.
You're a co-host, so you should be able to bring up that participants window if you want.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't. Oh, I see it. Got it. Why isn't that coming up?
Hi, Diane. Why don't you type in where you're calling us from? Not just Diane, but everyone.
Oh, I see. Yeah, they're all there. Atlanta.
Excellent. All right, we'll just start in a minute or two, giving a chance for anyone else to get connected to Zoom.
Okay, I'm embarrassed. Where's Yuli?
Oh boy, I don't know.
Sam.
Oh, Grace from Portland, Oregon.
I love Portland, Oregon.
That's got to be the distance award.
Man, have you ever seen their public gardens there? They're gorgeous.
Yes. Oh, so you're
In
north of
Jacksonville.
Jacksonville.
All right. All right, north of Jacksonville. Some nice down around there.
And Key West. Oh boy. So we've got
Ooh.
and Maryland, we've got lots of country
Key West.
here.
I love that that green parrot bar. When I go to Key West, I don't get to see anything else. They have live music there. It's awesome. We've got a good group joining. We got 14 on right now. And we have, what time do we have? I've got close to 7 on my watch. What do you have there?
Yeah, I'd suggest we wait till the top of the hour because many people, of course, their watch will remind them at 7 and then they'll rush to get connected.
Well, this should be fun. The public gardens were nice. Oh, homeless tents there? Oh, Grace, I didn't know that. Grace, I'm just curious, since we haven't started yet, do you know a company called Interstate Roofing? They do roofing and siding and all sorts of stuff. Just curious. You know them? The owner, who's a woman, one of the biggest roofing companies in the country, I mentored her right out of college. And then she went back to work for the family business, the Satrin family. They're awesome. You know them? Okay. How are we doing, Barry?
I think we could make a start.
That would be great.
I'm just going to go on mute in the background here, and Dave, it's all up to you.
All right. Well, I'm really glad all of you joined. And this session is called Survive Challenging Economic Times. Right? But hey, at the end of the day, don't worry about the economic times. Frankly, it doesn't help to worry. Whether it's good times or bad times, it's all about leadership. And that's a key theme of this presentation. But before we get into that, I've got, Barry's on the phone with me, and Barry does an unbelievable job at our score group just puts together lots of presentations and webinars and strategic alliances and whatever. Barry, you want to say hello to the group?
Yes. I think I've been on webinars with many of these names, quite a lot of familiar names on here. And again, welcome to tonight's session. I'll let Dave take it over again.
Well, a few words about SCORE, right? So just real quickly, it's a national organization, it's nonprofit. Maybe some of you someday will be part of it. We're all volunteers, and we offer, frankly, small business advice at no charge. So we do a lot of different things. We help clients in the startup stage, the growing stage, already existing, and frankly, our goal is real simple. We want to help you achieve your goals. It's personal. We have volunteers, they're expert advisors, and they're meant to you, and just a bunch of just incredible resources. One I already shared, Barry, who puts together workshops. We've got recordings and templates and all sorts of tools available to you. We got over 11,000 volunteers across the country, and we partner with the Small Business Association. Any questions about that before I go on? All right, if you want, type in the chat room if you got anything. But if you want, just check us out. Just go to www.score.org, and a lot of different things you can do there, but the primary ones is find a personal mentor, if that would be helpful, or take a workshop, and there's plenty of them. And these workshops are recorded, so browse the library. And it is just an incredible, comprehensive collection that you might want to look through. And a little bit, just quickly about me, I'm like the rest of the volunteers, I'm committed to helping entrepreneurs achieve their dreams. And that's what we do. I'm currently a full-time professor at one university, part-time professor at another university, in the MBA program, teaching capstone, which just means it's all the subjects near the end. I had a very lucky career as a senior executive with global responsibilities at Johnson & Johnson and consumer products at Armstrong, which you may know is the largest flooring and ceiling company, and Standard Industries, which I helped grow from 600 million to 6 billion, which is now the largest roofing manufacturer in the world. And I was involved in various entrepreneurial ventures. That was all great until one of my partners skipped the country, but great experience, and I'm active in some philanthropies. All right, let's get into this. Let's just make sure, I want to get agreement from you, and if you can type in the box, you agree with this, that tonight, this session would be successful for you. You got some insights into process improvements, especially survival methods, including one, why it's important to stop searching for safe. You know what? Safe doesn't really exist. Two, how people are really wired and drives what they do, whether they're customers, employees, whatever. And I'm talking about what the world-class companies learned, the Johnson & Johnsons, the Microsoft, companies like that, Procter & Gamble, that most companies, frankly, haven't figured out because it was obvious everyone would be doing it. Talk a little bit about focus and communication, right? Especially important when things are tougher. And frankly, when things get tougher, leaders are emotional, they get a little scared. And frankly, a lot of leaders, that's when they clam up because they're sort of more afraid to talk to other people. You want to take the opposite approach. Why and how to be Gumby? For those of you old enough to know who that little green guy was. But what I really mean is you got to be flexible. It's like that little green cartoon. You got to be flexible. But your most important role is trust. And I don't mean trust the general way. I mean viewing trust as strategic, not taking it for granted, because people don't listen closely to what you have to say unless they trust you. Two, how to gain more insight yourself and for other people you work with. And three, frankly, how to drive action. So if we accomplish those 5 things, that insight, would you agree tonight would be successful for you? And if not, share with me what you think is missing. I'll give you 4 or 5 seconds there to type in. Yeah, absolutely, Kirby. Sounds great. Thanks, Pat. All right, sounds like we got a definition of success. Let's get into it. If this is sort of true, what you want, but what's more likely. Right? So typically, we want no risk and huge gain. That fair? That's what we want. What's more likely? No, it's more of a pattern, right? It's more of a pattern. No risk, really not much gain. Some risk, some gains likely. And high risk, well, huge gain, hopefully, right? Well, what's the key takeaway here? We seek risk. We seek safe. We seek safe. Most people do. But we don't really want the outcome of safe. We got limited resources, so that means we got to really know how to focus, especially in more troubled times. 3, reality is, again, safe doesn't really exist. And 4, and this is really a key thing that companies like Procter & Gamble and Microsoft and those companies figured out, most people were often taught that people are benefit seeking. What those companies have figured out is people are more seeking to avoid an experience they don't want as primary, and secondarily, achieve something they do want. I'm going to talk a little bit more of that later, but if you study Microsoft and Procter & Gamble and companies like that, these world-class companies, what are they doing differently than a lot of other very good companies? They understand that people are primarily motivated, not all people, but most, to avoid an experience they don't want more than one they do want. And since most people are risk averse, what does that mean to you as a leader? Leadership, a big part of leadership is helping people overcome the fear of change. Because we know to be great, you got to change. The problem is we're wired as individuals to avoid change, because with change comes more risk. That makes sense. Everyone bought in so far? All right. So if safe doesn't exist, let's start by stopping trying to achieve it and instead leverage it and take advantage of it, right? So why doesn't safe always exist? Reality is you don't control all the facts. In fact, most of the facts you have next to no control over, and they're constantly changing. The complication is the journey that you're going through and your customers are going through, your suppliers are going through, your investors, it's constantly changing. Well, here's an analogy. Great leaders. Be your own human GPS unit. I mean, think of driving 20 years ago before GIS. I mean, with those map quests and whatever, even when computers came out, even before that, a bigger mess. Be a human GPS. What do I mean by that? Well, know where you're trying to go. But don't be afraid of some detours along the way. The lows just amplify the highs, so don't worry so much about the lows. Just move past them. One of the most important skills in business is resiliency, because you're going to take some hits. And frankly, enjoy that journey along the way, but keep that GPS going. Analogy is, I bring my family, we're going to go to Disney World, and we're living in, making it up, we're living in Chicago. Along the way, maybe, my wife wants to stop and see the Lincoln Museum, or maybe one of my sons wants to see in Kentucky the making Corvettes, whatever it is. Okay, it takes you a little off course. It's not what you planned. It's not necessarily, use that GPS to know overall, where am I trying to get to? And because all of this is going on, very important, don't try to turn business into a science that it's not. Apply your best skills and analytical skills, but understand, business is always best guess. But the better you are at an educated best guess, the better your results. And frankly, be decisive, because a wrong decision is generally less disastrous than indecision. You agree with that? Is that something you all have seen? I'll make sure you're still on board. If you can type in the chat room. Is it making sense so far? Yeah, awesome. So one of the things I share with my students, I want to share with you, And as I said, I ran, some pretty large companies. And one of the first things in the companies I ran, and most of them were, frankly, like at the roofing one I told you about in Armstrong, my job at Johnson & Johnson was to start companies. My job after that was to take divisions and companies out of technical bankruptcy. One of the first things I shared with my team, good times and bad, but remember, most of the times I was dealing with was bad times. I mean, I'm an expert at bad times because that was most of my career dealing with bad times. So think about 4 types of facts, right? Tell me this doesn't make sense. Gold are the facts you have from first grade all the way through college if you went to college or high school. You know what gold is? It's accurate and really important. And we're blinded in school, especially some of those straight A types. I wish I was, but I wasn't. But we're blinded by, if we got perfect data and we understand and memorize the tools to use them, we're going to get the right answer. Unfortunately, that only works in school. Because in the real world, we got 4 types of facts. We got gold, we're used to from school. It's accurate and really important, right? And we got those, focus on them, all hands on deck. But we also have vampires. I found in my career, especially in bad times, but even good times, vampires happen to be accurate, but they're less important than the gold. And they suck the blood out of the most important stuff. You've seen it in meetings where someone says, yeah, but, and I know that when a yeah, but comes, there's a good chance there's a vampire behind it. It's going to take the meeting off track. It's going to take the focus off track. It's going to keep the priorities off track. One of your jobs as a leader is to try to push the vampires aside, not insulting them, but say, that is accurate and it's sort of important, but let's focus on the 4 or 5 most important things, not lose track. We'll follow up later. The third type of facts you find all the time in business is big walls. And what's a big wall? It's something someone else believes, a shareholder, or supplier, or customer, or distributor. It happens not to be accurate. I remember early in my career, well, they're wrong. I'm going to share with them why they're wrong. Rarely worked. When you got big brick walls, generally best to sort of steer around it, or around it, not through it. One of the most important types of facts in great leadership, what I call ghosts. Ghosts are the glue that when you share the story of what you're doing, it holds the gold together. It's what makes the gold make sense. And by the way, a good way to know if you've got a good strategy or anything, they teach us at places like a Johnson & Johnson, learn to talk about things as stories, because when you share as a story, you're more likely to hear yourself what's not quite making sense. So go through assumptions. And they're assumptions for 1 of 3 reasons. 1, you don't have the time to get the fact. 2, you don't have an ability to get the fact. Or 3, it's too expensive to get the fact versus the benefit of having it. But it's the glue that connects the gold. And the gold and the focus on gold, it doesn't mean you ignore vampires, but the focus on gold is what gets you through especially rough times and just drive like crazy during great times. Does that make sense? Is that different than what you've heard before, but does it make sense to you? Any comments in the chat room on that? That making sense to you? All right. Let's go back and look at how we're wired, right? And not how we're wired of what's obvious, how we're wired that the world-class companies that had plenty of money to figure out how do people really act? And frankly, we can look back, we already learned a lot of it. We probably started learning it back in high school. But we often forget what we learned in high school and applied it to our business world. So let me just think back to high school. And let's say you wanted to go on a date, right? You want to ask, let's go to a movie date. Well, you didn't ask. What was the obstacle? What was the obstacle to asking? And for a lot of you, you can probably say, you know what? I wanted to go on that date. I thought it'd be awesome. But fear, F-E-A-R, right, Kim? Fear was the obstacle. And fear is the obstacle to almost all things moving forward. We're wired to be fearful. And what's required to overcome that obstacle? Kim, you got some ideas on that? It starts with T and it ends with T. Thank you, Sam. What's required to overcome that? It's trust. It's trust that, you know what? This could turn out great. And if it doesn't, really not that big a deal. So 2 key leadership things to keep in mind always that other people are going through. One is fear of change, fear of doing something that, and 2 is trusting that it's okay to do it, that it's okay to take risks. So where do we take this? Well, about fear. Everything you want to achieve is on the other side of fear. Think about that. Everything you want to achieve that you probably haven't achieved, there's a really good chance that's on the other side of fear. And fear prevented you from getting there. And by the way, if you're a score, you're probably less fear-oriented than most people, but the people you're dealing with, people that you work with, the customers you're trying to get, the distributors, the suppliers, whatever, understand that's what they're going through. I love this quote by Nelson Mandela. I learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it's the triumph over it. It's okay to be fearful. But get excited about that because that's what can set you apart. I mean, the famous one, Franklin Roosevelt, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And when I sort of believe in this, initial fear, moderation can be inspiring, but too much can destroy. So in what you're dealing with in business, you got to sort of be like Goldilocks and the 3 bears. Try to keep that fear not too hot, not too high, not too cold, but just right. Just enough to keep that tension moving. But comfort that it's okay, we're going to get through it. And about trust. Tell me if this isn't true. I want you to think about your interactions with other people. And tell me if this isn't true. If you don't trust them, you probably don't listen as closely. Would that be fair? Anyone disagree with that? Anyone agree with that? You don't trust somebody, you're less likely to listen closely to them. Right? And so therefore, if you think about it, I believe, and being in the business of taking technically bankrupt companies out of bankruptcy, frankly, I went at it totally differently than most of the people who do that. Most of the people in that business split up those companies, ruin lives, and make a ton of money. I wouldn't take those assignments. I made a lot less money because of it, but I'd only take assignments that they wanted to grow the company out. I don't want to have my career about hurting people. One of the first things I figured out, in business school and in discussions, whatever, most people talk about like strategy is the key thing. But it's culture. And one of the foundations of culture is trust. And therefore, trust needs to be managed strategically because it's always shifting. Let's do a quick exercise. And I want you to participate in this, okay? Quick exercise. Here's a scenario. We get this company called Acme Widgets Manufacturing. We have about 30 employees. And one day, Angry Joe, he got fired. By the way, that happened 10 minutes ago. When Angry Joe left, he went out the door yelling, You guys are going to be sorry. The perception of the other 29 people, you think probably a little bit of fear, a little bit of risk, especially in today's age. But the leader believes, come on, it's Angry Joe. There's hardly any risk. Now picture that happening, and I want you to take your best guess. For the rest of it, at least that workday, did the individual employee's accuracy improve, go down, or no change? Did the speed in which they got their work done increase, drop? No change. Quality, enjoyment, collaboration, reliability, the key things you count on. And Kirby and Sam, you're right. They're probably all going to go down, right, Andrew? They're all going to go down. And why? Because the leader's looking at what's going on through their eyes and not through the emotions of most other people. And frankly, again, most of us by definition, when we get a little scared, we clam up. And as leaders, especially in difficult times, that's when people need to hear from you. Yeah, and Kirby, you're right. I mean, a lot of times, and I agreed with that philosophy, if I had to let someone go, I generally did it on a Friday after everyone had left, because it gave things a chance to calm down before we got together Monday. Kirby, do you have any other reasons or thoughts on why you did that? But I think it's very good advice. All right, you get a chance to add that. I'm going to continue. So what's the so what? What do leaders have to do to survive challenging economic times and, frankly, help them in good times too? And I agree with you, Kirby. It's a cool down period. So one is you got to focus better. You got to focus time in your dollars, because they're even more scarce in difficult times. Two, you got to be a little more flexible and change rapidly, pivot when it's required, because in difficult times, things change faster. And three is you got to show accountability. It doesn't mean beating people up. It does mean staying on top of what they're doing. What are the obstacles they're facing? How can you help them around those obstacles, including yourself? And two, it doesn't communicate better. We're going to be more clear in what we share. We got to generate more trust, because especially in challenging times, trust is even a bigger asset. My personal belief, in whatever you do, trust is your most important asset. For a company, trust is the most important asset. And as leaders, and I don't mean based on the title you have, I just mean your approach to life every day. Help other people overcome their fear that's keeping them from accomplishing, on the other side of fear, what they want to accomplish. Let's get into that. Let's get into what lessons we can learn there. First of all, you can't do everything. One of the biggest mistakes I see in small business, in the SCORE accounts I've worked with, and frankly, I used to see it in bigger companies too, trying to do everything that sounded like a good idea. Because the more you try to do everything, the more you spread your resources. In general, you're not thought of as anything, and you're not as good. Focus is one of the most important things. One of my philosopher I remember reading, and it's always stuck with me. Strategy has more to do with understanding what you're not going to do, with clarity on what you're not going to do. Strategy has more to do with that than trying to create clarity in what you are going to do. that again, strategy has more to do with clarity of what you're not going to do, as importantly as clarity of what you are going to do. And you can't focus on everything because things are changing too fast. Because here's the reality. If you can't control it, it's external. We're going to call that external stuff. And again, your job is to look at external stuff and say, well, what opportunities and threats do I see outside in the industry with competitors and customers and suppliers and shareholders or whoever it is you're dealing with, even if you're a one-person operation? You look at what's going on that you don't control and you ask yourself, what's my best guess of the opportunities and threats created? And two, then look internally. You personally or your organization, whatever, what can you control? And ask yourself, well, as a result of that, what are the true strengths we have over others we're competing with, that the shareholders we want, investors, we're a better option. The employees, if we're hiring, we're a better option. The customers we seek, we're a better option. What things do we have going for us that we're a better option for other people, for other constituencies? And where do we have weaknesses? We'll call that internal. Let me use an analogy. And I learned this in high school. We had a great high school football coach. I watched how he approached things. At the beginning of the week, he studies the other team. Does he study every single player on the other team? No. He focuses on the 4 or 5 best players on the other team and the 2 or 3 weakest players that are likely to be on the field a lot. And he categorizes those as opportunities and threats. And he stepped back and said, our job, best we can, to take advantage of the opportunities we see on the other teams and want to protect ourselves from some of the threats. And they focus on 4 or 5 things. If you focus on more than 4 or 5, you're probably not going to get anything done. And then what does that coach do? Then the coach starts looking at our team. Let's be honest with ourselves. Where do we have significant strengths? And where are we a little vulnerable? And what's the key to great strategy? Well, it's starting to put it together. It's evaluating. It's taking an external opportunity and matching it against an internal strength. I call those sledgehammers. Sledgehammers are the ones you want to focus on, have everybody that you can focus on that, swing that sledgehammer, and that's where you make your money. And 2, you match your external threats with your internal weaknesses, and you put a little bit against that. That's your Achilles heel. Don't try to turn Achilles heel into a strength, just try to protect it better. You put most of your money behind sledgehammers, your resources, time and dollars. You put some of it against your Achilles heel. And by the way, don't try to take advantage of every sledgehammer you see, opportunity, or don't try to take advantage of every Achilles heel. You got to look at the options available to you of sledgehammers and the options available to you of Achilles heel. And then based on a risk versus reward basis, focus on 3 or 4, 5 of them at most. That's the goal. Does this make sense so far? And is this helping? Give me a little bit of feedback before I keep going. It's helping you out. Thank you, Pat. Okay. Anybody else? Grace? Good. Getting some positive. Awesome. Thank you. All right. My confidence is back. I'm going to keep going. Let's talk about the financial game and that part of the focus. All right. I'm going to share with you, not matter it's the right way. I'm just going to happen to share with you how teams I was on, how we tried to handle some things. Right. Doesn't mean we can always do it, but try. Step 1, we said, okay, what's the most likely upside scenario for our business coming up? And what resources are required? Then two, we'd say, okay, what's the most likely downside? Not the worst case, but most likely it didn't go as well as we thought. And what are the resources needed? And then we say, but what's our most probable situation? And I'll be honest with you, I learned early in my career, there's no glory, even when I was a one-person company, there's no glory in a missed forecast. I'll pat it maybe a little bit. I used to think of it as a good probable means there's 60% chance I'm going to achieve it and 40% chance I'm going to miss it. I asked myself, what's the investment we need? What are the resources we need to achieve that? And what do I do with that? Well, the gap between probable and upside, I generally, if I could, look to see if that upside happens, can I source that as opposed to invest it internally? Can I flex to it if things are going better than we thought? And why? Because I don't like laying people off. And I'd rather things are going better than we expected. I'd rather start with overtime and subcontract what we can so that when things go the other direction, we're not laying people off. Because that's a culture killer. I mean, you never have, doesn't mean you can totally avoid it. The culture killer. Or two, I used to measure the gap between our probable and our downside. And I'd proactively think way before it happened, if that scenario happened, are there any people that, okay, with a layoff, I get an excuse to cut? Or B, if the whole team's doing great, maybe I got to see if we can go to a 4-day work week. Marta, you asked if there's a PowerPoint. I will, if you email me, and it'll be on the last slide, I will send you the PowerPoint. So that would be great to do. And I'm also, I know that Barry is also recording it, so we'll get out that as well. But yes, I do have a PowerPoint. I'm happy to share this with you. We're also happy to share the recording, and we'll get that out. And if you just drop us an email, we'll do that as quick as possible. Does that sound okay, Marta? Okay. So why did I do that? Why did I do those measurements? So I was ready for the situations, not reacting to them in panic. Allows you to control your destiny better, right? And adapt faster, both downside and upside scenarios. So it's a way of thinking about it. It's not necessarily a right way, it's a way of thinking about it. I want to show you an example of using numbers, right? This is the traditional way that I'm used to seeing numbers. This happens to be the income statement from Apple computer. And when most accountants and most people in teams I would, and I'd say, well, let me see the income statement. This is sort of what it would look like. So I'll ask you, what does, in 20 seconds, what does this tell you? This is the traditional way income statements are shown. A bunch of numbers on here. Is it all good? Is it all bad? What does it tell you? Anyone have any thoughts on that? Ah, Amber, that's a horrible way to start. I got stories on that. If you want to contact me later, that's fine. Okay, let me share with you a lesson I hope you take away from tonight. Very important. This is traditional. And this is a traditional balance sheet. And it happens to be Apple. Bunch of numbers. I don't know what those are telling me. Change the numbers over to percents. Think of data as helping you ask better questions, as opposed to thinking of data is how does it give me the right answer? Think of data as how does it help me spot quickly better questions? Think of it like the dashboard in a car. How can I quickly pick up a trend? What's going on? Individual numbers don't help me see quickly what's happening. Individual numbers, well, I don't care if inventory was 1.2 million and then 300,000 and 20,000. I care what it is relative to sales. So in this chart, what can I quickly see? Apple all of a sudden got a huge reduction in cost of goods sold, 4%. That's huge. And by the way, their operating income went up 6% as a result of that from the prior year. And how they accomplished that? They reduced R&D a little bit in sales and solid. And you see how quickly, and I can spot those trends. And I can see what's going on. Same thing in the balance sheet, which there was more variation. Right? Look at that. A big reduction in cash investment in the company. That improves profitability. A gigantic reduction in marketable securities, just dollars sitting on a shelf, not generating great returns. Receivables, they're getting a little better at collecting them. Inventory went up a little bit, but in total, the current assets dropped dramatically. And if you're an investor and looking at return on investment, man, this is huge improvement over the year before. So my key point is, A, take whatever numbers you have and make them relative to something else. And B, show them as a trend. Okay? Show them as a trend. It says, will there be a replay? I had trouble finding my login. Trouble logging in tonight. I had to use my phone. We are recording this. We will send out the recording of this video. If at the end, drop to my email. And my email is david.harrison@scorevolunteer.org. And I have it on the last slide too. Just drop it to us and Chrissy, we'll get you the recording. And frankly, if you have questions over and above the recording, call me.
I'll make sure that the recording is sent out to everyone who's registered, but it will probably take till tomorrow till we get it processed.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Barry. Barry does an awesome job at this, man. He keeps us all out of trouble. All right, so the key is, A, use numbers to ask better questions. B, do it as trends because you'll pick up stuff going on much quicker. That way, pick up things going on and focus. And Kirby asked, curious as to why receivables has increased in later years without an increase in sales. Well, actually, sales have increased. Okay, this is all as a percentage of sales. Everything I have on this chart is a percentage of sales. Kirby, I should have been more clear about that. But it doesn't matter what you make it a percent of, just make it relative to something else so you can quickly see a trend. All right? And help? Awesome. Right? And again, if I was an investor in Wall Street, this chart, the balance sheet, actually shared more with me the improvements being made. Okay, I heard the chart can't be seen. That means no one is true, but it's there again. Can you see it now? Can someone confirm? Can you see my charts now?
I think others can see it.
Okay, looks like they're getting it. All right. And if you got any questions on this, feel free to let me know. By the way, one little thing I learned in business early, one of the reasons I track accounts receivables, no matter what size of company, very carefully, is I learned that if my accounts receivables were staying in a pretty steady trend, and all of a sudden, as a percentage of sales increased, or number of days, all of a sudden took a quick spike up. Not always, but generally that meant I have a service or quality issue in my company. I noticed anytime receivables takes a quick adjustment up is a good potential I got a problem going on. And yeah, potential impact the PPP. All right, let me get back to this. And if the chart goes off, you let me know right away. Now, I don't know about you. I've read a bunch of books. Some of you probably have too, on strategies and objectives. And frankly, I used to get all confused because they're mostly written as if you're the CEO, you're the president. And as I'm trying to take technically bankrupt companies out of bankruptcy, I learned a ton through that because I had to focus on those details. And I discovered a technique by accident. And it's now being used, I know, in over 300 companies. And here's what I learned. I'm going to suggest you, no matter if your company is 1 or 2 or 3 people, just think of it this way. All right, just try this. Objectives are they're the goal. Think of it as the most important things. You have vampire objectives too. I'm going to call them tactics. The key objectives, and if you have more than 5 or 6, you have at the corporate level, you probably have too many. And here's how I know it's a really good objective. It's smart. And what does smart mean? It means I can look at your objective and know if you achieved it or you didn't. It's black and white. I either achieved it or I didn't. And I can tell you, never in my career did I actually hit a forecast or hit a budget head on. I either achieved it and went beyond it, or I missed it. But the point is, an objective that is subjective is not very effective. So what's a great objective include in the recipe? It's specific, what we're trying to accomplish. It's got a number on it, what we're trying to accomplish. It is within reach, it's attainable. It's relevant. What do I mean by relevant? It's really important given what we're doing, and it's time-based. I know when I said I'm going to hit that number. Great objectives. They may be 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, whatever you're doing. In some companies, I've seen this quickly, ad agencies, sometimes I've seen it as short as a couple of months. Point is, it's the most important things we got to accomplish. It's specifically written out. There's 5, 6 of them. So everyone who's involved, get their arms what it is. It's got a number on it, and you know when it's going to be achieved. Strategies are the 4 or 5 major things you're going to do, the how you're going to achieve those objectives. Those strategies are the how, the major initiatives, the things that you're going to do. And tactics, I think of as mini objectives. If I put them in as an objective, it becomes a vampire. If I ignore it, I might miss something. So just like objectives, tactics need to be smart. They're at a detail level. They're not things discussed at the level when I'm, my team, my most important people, or me personally, if I'm a one-man show, right? There are many things I got to keep in mind. And as you grow your organization, this is the trick I learned. 1, just take the attitude that your job is to get your boss promoted. If your attitude to get your boss promoted, you're probably working on the right things. But more importantly is this. Take your boss's strategies, the how they're going to achieve the objectives, and tie your objectives to their how. Here are the specific things I'm trying to accomplish, the major ones, and why they're going to help drive my boss's strategies. And 2, take your strategies, the most important how, and the people or resources you have that report to you, tie those objectives to your strategies. And now what you have is an accordion of objectives and strategies and tactics through an entire organization holding together, with two, people understanding what did it start at. Everybody in the organization should know the most important and non-secret objectives, no matter how big or small your company is. By the way, a book that I've used with some clients, you might be interested, if you want, you can call me afterwards, is a system called EOS. You may have heard a bunch of ads on the radio lately for franchises for it. There's over 300,000 companies using it over the last 3 years. And you can basically pick up the essence of it from a book called Traction. It's about 15 bucks. And I highly recommend you read it, because Traction is all about missions and visions and objectives, but how to lead and how to hold people accountable and how to measure, how to hold all this together, which seems so complex, but it doesn't need to be, because the key to greatness is making the complex simple. How are we doing? Still making sense? Can I keep going? Quick feedback. All good? Sam, good? Anybody else? Good? All right. So I want to do a quick exercise. Sam, can I help? Can I ask for your help with this? Do you have a secondhand watch? You have a secondhand watch? Okay. Here's what I want you to do. In the chat room, I want you to let us know when we're at 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, up to 60 seconds. Is that okay, Sam? You're going to help us with that when I tell you to start? All right? Here's what I want everybody else to do. I want you to first find the number 1, then find the number 2. I'm going to show you a chart, then the number 3, and see how far you can get in 10 seconds. Sam, we're going to start now. Okay? Everybody first find the 1, and the 2, 3, see how far you can get. And Sam, you're going to let us know every 10 seconds. First find the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, 20 seconds. Thank you, Sam. Don't need to know the number yet, Stephen. Oh, Pat, you've done this before. Okay, some of you have done this before. 30 seconds. We'll get back to you in a second, Pat. Okay, I want everyone to type in the number they got up to. 10, 12, 15, whatever you got up to. And a few of you, I'm guessing you've done this before, but quickly type in how many you got. Andrea, 38, that is unbelievable. Diane, 25. Okay, Chrissy, not sure she got so far. You guys did really well. Up 12, I'm used to seeing things like that. All right. You know what? We're going to try it again. Right? Sam, you ready to do my clock for me? All right, everybody. I'm going to change one thing. Let's go. Number 1's in the top left. Number 2's next to it in the box next to it. Number 3 is in the box next to that. And when you get up to 48, type 48 into the chat room. And Sam, you let us know how many seconds we've got going. Go. Kirby already got there. Awesome, Kirby. In under 10 seconds. Whoa, William already got there. Under 20 seconds. Andrea got there. Under 30 seconds. Diane got there. Awesome. Under 30 seconds. We're at 40 seconds. Awesome. Who else? You're all getting there, 50 seconds. Oh my gosh, look at you guys go. Okay. Now, tell me if this isn't true. When I put the blocks up, your anxieties dropped. When I put the blocks up, it was easier. When I put the blocks up, you learned better. You were more relaxed. You took it in. What are the implications? Here's the implication. When we talk to people, it all makes sense to us. It's in a perfectly logical order. But to them, they often can't tell where we are. So use visuals and be really clear when you switch topics. And we're not wired to do that. So an example, why have like a training book? I've heard people say, but I don't need one. Yeah, it's not for you. It's so as you turn each page, they get it. They can follow the logic. And yeah, Michael, we're going to be sending out a recording probably tomorrow, and we'll be sending out the slides probably tomorrow. All you need to do on the last page tonight, it'll have my email address. And if you send that to me, we'll get you all set up. All right. Let's switch topics again. One of the advantages I had at being at Johnson & Johnson was we had access to a lot of money. At age 26, I had millions, literally millions, my team and I, to spend on learning stuff. And one day, the chairman of the board at Johnson & Johnson teamed up with the chairman of the board of IBM and took 5 of us from each company. I was fortunate. I was one of the 5, all under 30, and said, we're sending you off to a hotel, and we want you to come back and share with us. You have plenty of money, plenty of data. We want you to share with us the difference between our most successful leaders and our average leaders, and our most successful salespeople and our average salespeople. And I can remember the first time in that room. I mean, I happened to be in charge of oral care products at the time, Reach toothbrush and floss and stuff like that. Another person was on OB tampons. Another one was on Tylenol. I mean, the weirdest collection, right? Yep, Michael, there will be a recording available. We'll get it to you. I'll explain at the end of this session, all right, how to get that. And IBM, I mean, we had one person on typewriters and one person on computers and one person on software. And we're going, this is nutty. But we said, you know what? They asked us to do this. So we did a bunch of research. And one of the things we did in the research is we put in a fake question. And we put in a fake question because we said, if we have a fake question and they answer it, we know they lied. So we'll just throw out those answers. We thought that was genius. So here was our fake question. We asked questions, you know, size, personality, how they talk, were they introverts, extroverts. We asked tons of questions. But our fake question turned out to be the best predictor of our best leaders and our best salespeople. In other words, things like were they male or female, or their height, or their color eyes, or their personality, or none of that was predictive. The only thing that was predictive was they were good storytellers. And at first, it made no sense to us. But think about it. Who's most important to most people? Me. Who's most important to a storyteller? You. What's communicated? Most of us. Logical facts. That's our comfort zone. Storytellers. It's the outcome on how this is going to affect you. They want you to picture it. The emotions. What's the language? Most of us. The industry language. Storytellers, whatever words they're more likely to understand. What's success? They heard me. Storytellers, they understood me and understood what's in it for them. How they shared it. Most of us, we tell you stuff. Storytellers engage you. Key one, what's the focus most of us? Who did it? What happened? Where it happened? How it happened? When it happened? Storytellers, why it happened? And what's the communication strategy? Most of us, it's to convince. Storytellers, it's to help. And the advantage of stories is when you tell a story with the gold, the most important information held together with the ghosts, the assumptions, making the complex simple to understand, getting a sense of the emotions and the things and all go with it, you start hearing yourself what makes sort of sense and what doesn't. It becomes like a natural chiropractor to your thinking. Practice being a great storyteller. And why are we wired to share facts? That's our comfort zone. We know those. For customers and employees, they're wired to conclude on opinions. Why? Because with their opinions, they can never be wrong. So the key to success in all these questions is when you ask questions, ask yourself if they gave you a fact. If they did, follow up the question, because here's part of the magic. When people run out of facts, they get to the emotional outcomes that they're trying to gain or avoid. It's the emotional outcomes that they're trying to gain or avoid. Whether it's an employee, a customer, that's what drives behavior. Yeah, Kirby, it's a great way to do proof of concept. And again, if any of us can help you through that, great. And one of the tools I created, but I never published the book, but I got to tell you, man, am I glad I did this. I created a tool with the analogy steady, because I learned at Johnson & Johnson. I mean, in my heart, at the end of the day, trust is the most important asset. And here's what the steady model is. If you think of trust, the recipe, as demonstrating that you care for them and respect them, then you'll see the ingredients are the questions you ask versus telling them stuff, and explaining the why, but with less details. The more you share information, the more it's trusted. The more you tell information, it's slightly less trusted. So the most important things you want to communicate to an employee, to a customer, to a supplier, whatever, take the 4 or 5 most important things and say, instead of telling them, how do I make it steady? What's steady? How can I put a statistic on it? 9 out of 10 hospitals thinking about pain relief use Tylenol, rather than saying, you know what? We're an awesome pain reliever. Or 2, a testimonial. I lost 150 pounds by eating at Subway. Telling isn't selling, asking is. Kirby, you're dead on. Expert opinion. Crest is recognized by the first was recognized by the American Dental Association. An analogy, something they can picture in their minds. They're like these scrubbing bubbles to get in and clean the toilet so you don't have to touch it. Demonstrate it. Well, the first blade pulls back the whisker and the second blade grabs it. And the why. It's what you told me based on a question I asked you before or something I know you've had this experience. Take your most important information, make it steady, you'll have a little bit of advantage in trust. Think chess, but communicate checkers. not that they're not as smart. When I called on Sam Walton at Walmart, I thought chess before I went in, but I explained checkers. There was more value in making the complex simple than trying to prove how smart we are by making the complex even more complex. Insight. You get the insight. What's insight come from? It's matching a cause and an effect. And one of the keys in business is understand these things. There's only 5 things that can cause anything good or bad to happen in your business. Who did it? What happened? When it happened? Where it happened? And how it happened. And you ought to have a checklist going through who, what, when, where, how on anything that's going right or wrong. And it might be a combination of them. And then how do you know the most important ones, the priorities? It's the answer to why. Why helps you find the gold nuggets and separate them from the vampires. But what drives action of anybody that's got other choices other than you? And it's not what you may have been trained on benefit selling. Frankly, I can prove to you it doesn't really work. What's the recipe? Most people's behavior is driven by what's in it for me. And the key to what's in it for me is not what your product and services does to them. That happens to be your comfort zone, but that's not what they're buying. They're buying the experience you're helping them avoid. And then the experience you're helping them gain. So I'll give you an example. I did really well in the roofing industry. We went from 600 million to 6 billion. In what was a commodity industry. What did we do differently? Everyone else went in. It called in. Where's the leak? Oh, tell me about the leak. Oh, well, here's what we're going to do to fix that leak. That's selling what we do. What did we do differently? Well, where's that leak happening? Oh, in the manufacturing facility. What part of the building are you usually getting it? Oh, what's underneath that? What's it leaking on? Oh, so who's yelling and screaming when that happens? Oh, does it shut down the line? Are those hourly people? Does that mean you have to send them home? And who's yelling? And who's screaming? You know what? I'm going to help make sure that you're not shutting down that line and sending people home that really need that hourly wage and making sure that chief financial officer is not yelling at you because you didn't budget for this roofing. You see the difference? Find out the experience they're looking to avoid or gain and how you can help that with your products and services. Right? The key to driving behavior. And what drives that action? Well, here's the journey other people go through, whether it's an employee, a customer, whatever. First, do they trust you? You got to first be acceptable before you can be special. One of the biggest mistakes people make is tell them how special they are before they're even acceptable. In other words, people subconsciously first rule you out before they rule you in. So how do you do that? First, talk about what they expect and how you can do that. Then create insight into what's unexpected. You get your business by being first acceptable and then being special. You get your employees first being acceptable and then being special. You get investors first being acceptable and then being special. Value is in the unexpected. Special, acceptable is what's expected. And you got to earn their trust to do that, which again is shared before. You get a lot more of that through the questions you ask and sharing the why, what's in it for them. So the insight comes from what's unexpected. That's a little unique. And it either reduces problems or risks for them, an experience they don't want, or it increases gain. They trust. And the 4th step is what's in it for me? What drives action? Why should I come with you now? What are you promising me? And what are the next steps? That's how to think about communicating strategy. At the end of the day, what's this mean? Your search every day. If you go out every day and say, who can I help avoid having a bad experience? And who can I help gain a good experience? I drove my kids nuts. They joke about it today, but every night at the dinner table from age 6 to 18, they knew the first question Dad was going to ask at the dinner table was, who did you see that looked like they potentially were going to have a bad day? And what did you do about it? You focus in your life on how you can help other people avoid an experience they don't want. It's amazing how things come back. As Zig Ziglar said, consider one of the top salespeople ever, you will get all you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. And William's saying, wow, that's one of the quotes I use all the time. Awesome, William. Deviation, learn from member. It was from, Zig Ziglar. So I'm curious from you. Quick summary from you. What were the most important things you gained today? If you wouldn't mind, let's put them in the chat room so we can share. What were some of the most important things you gained today? Anyone willing to share? Write down and put in the chat room the most important things you gained today. Making complex simple. Yeah. Making the complex simple. Visualize. People thrive on fear and require trust. Make that smaller. Sorry about that. Okay. What else we got there? Ah. All right. What do we got? We got a sell, sizzle. The steak's important too, but the sizzle, you got to capture their attention. We like to be entertained. Focus on their outcomes. It's the why. Reputation. Communicate by sharing. And the other reason through questions is, think about it. When you do something through a question, you can accomplish almost anything through a question. You can uncover stuff, you can suggest stuff, you can learn stuff, you can do anything through a question based on tone of voice. But here's why great leaders do so much through questions, because at the end of the day, they still own it when you walk it away. When you tell stuff, you own it. When you lead through primarily questions, they own it. All right, so at the beginning, you agreed you'd be successful if you got insight. Stop searching for safe because it doesn't exist. How people were really wired and why that drives what we might do. The importance of focus and communication. And it's even more important when things are tough. Why you got to be Gumby, pivot, flexible. And your most important role is to create change. And to create change of anybody, customers, employees, whatever, you got to strategically generate trust care and respect. You got to communicate chess. Think chess, communicate checkers, which is create more insight. Who, what, when, where, how. The only things that cause anything good or bad to happen, it's the why that creates the insight, but what drives action behavior? It's the emotional opinions that they summarize down to on why they should go with you as the option versus someone else, which is driven by their emotional conclusion. What am I going to avoid that I don't want? What am I going to gain that I do want? So was today's webinar effective and successful for you? How'd we do? Oh, awesome. Thank you, Kirby. Thank you, Chrissy. Appreciate that, Mark. Oh, this is so great. Thank you so much. And I'll be doing other webinars and stuff. So if you notice, my email is on this page here. If you send me an email, I'll work with Barry to get a recording out and the PowerPoints out within a couple of days. Feel free to contact me directly if I can help. And keep an eye from the announcements Barry sends out, whatever, on other webinars I may be doing, because I'd love to have you aboard. Barry, do you have any other thoughts that you can share?
No, I want to thank you, Dave, for doing a terrific job. I want to thank our participants for participating so well this evening. And you will get an email from SCORE asking for your feedback. We certainly appreciate if you would take a moment to do that. It helps us plan for our future events. I'm just checking my schedule here, and Dave is doing another webinar on October 20th about perfecting your elevator pitch. So you might want to put that date on your calendar and check our website so that you can register for that one as well.
Yeah, and I'll share with you on that one. It's a really important one. And don't think of the elevator pitch as a sales thing. Think of it as leadership. No matter what and where you focus and what the industry is, having a great elevator pitch will help everything going on for you and the organization you're with. So feel free to, I'm glad you brought that up. I look forward to you being part of that. If you join in, it's a good one to participate in.
And thank you, Chrissy. Aaron pointed out that it's scorevolunteer.org, not .com. So
sorry about that.
That's okay. I think we've got everybody trained by now because all of our email addresses end in .org.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much. This was such a pleasure for me and rewarding for me. And you've given me a gift tonight as well. So thanks, everybody. And Barry, again, thanks for all your help making this happen. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.